Now coming on to the pemphigus group of disorders, which are basically intraepidermal. It is derived. The pemphigus is derived from the word called pemphix, which means blister or bubble. And pemphigus are a group of autoimmune blistering diseases of skin and mucous membranes. So you can get involvement of skin as well as oral mucosa, genital mucosa, nasal mucosa, or the eye also in pemphigus. So what do you get once you do a skin biopsy in histology? You get intraepidermal blister. So pemphigus, the intraepidermal blister means the level of bulla or the split are inside the epidermis, and there is loss of cell-to-cell adhesions and suppression of keratinocytes. These special cells are known as acantholytic cells. You know what happens is the keratinocytes are attached to each other by desmosomes. And within this pemphigus, which is autoimmune disorder, the antibodies target these desmosomes and these cells are separated. So these form the rounded cells, which are known as acantholytic cell, rounded cells with the nucleus, which is a big nucleus with a nucleolus. These are known as acantholytic cells. Now, in immunopathology, basically, as I told you, you get in vivo bound and circulating IgG onto antibodies, autoantibodies mainly in pemphigus. Sometimes in IgA pemphigus, you get IgA antibodies also, which are directed against the epidermal cadherins. These are calcium-dependent cell-to-cell adhesion molecules found on the surface of keratinocytes. So cadherin, desmosomes and all, they are broken up. These the keratinocytes will become acantholytic cells in pemphigus. Now there are different types. As I told you, pemphigus vulgaris, suprabasal blister is there, and it has one variant called pemphigus vegetans. Pemphigus foliaceus is superficial layer just below the corneal corneum. The first layer is stratum corneum, then different layers are there of skin. 4 layers of the epidermis are there. Pemphigus foliaceus, very superficial. Pemphigus then it has variants like pemphigus herpetiformis, pemphigus erythematosus, and endemic pemphigus, and paraneoplastic pemphigus. And the drug-induced pemphigus is also there. Then intracellular IgA dermatosis. So these are different ones. All top ones are due to IgG. This is due to IgA. It has 2 variants: IgA pemphigus foliaceus and subcorneal pustular dermatosis. Now, starting one with the pemphigus vulgaris, which is it is disease of middle age, but in Indian population, the younger people are affected. One of the tribes of Jews called Ashkenazai Jews are increased susceptibilities there, male and female, there is equal distribution. And the main etiology is the target antigen is desmoglein 3 and desmoglein 1 in few patients, as compared to pemphigus foliaceus, where the target antigen is desmoglein 1. Now, this desmoglein 3 is expressed only in the basal and suprabasal layers of epidermis. Dependent is found in the basal and suprabasal layers of the epidermis. So, this level of split in the pemphigus vulgaris is suprabasal. Desmoglein 1 is found throughout the epidermis, particularly in the upper layers. So, in pemphigus foliaceus, mainly the desmoglein 1 is there, and in the mucosa, oral mucosa, genital mucosa, nasal mucosa, desmoglein 3 is strongly expressed, but desmoglein 1 is weakly expressed. So, in pemphigus vulgaris group of disorders, you get the mucosal involvement as it is mainly targeting desmoglein 3, while in pemphigus foliaceus, you don't get the involvement of the mucosa as only desmoglein 1 is expressed. Now, coming on to the pathogenesis, circulating IgG4 pemphigus autoantibodies bind to desmoglein 3 and 1, found in desmosomes which are present on keratinized cell membrane. In the initial pathology, I told you that desmosome the target. Then there is lysis of the intracellular cement substance, which leads to cantholisis. These individual keratinocytes are separated, which leads to formation of intraepidermal blister. Blister cavity contains mainly acantholytic cells. The clinical features of pemphigus vulgaris are basically all patients, they get painful oral erosions, but intact blisters are very rare to be found on the mucosa, as in blisters are very fragile and flaccid and they are easily breakable. More than 50% of patients also develop flaccid blisters and widespread cutaneous erosions. So generally the history, this is generally oral lesions come before, then come the cutaneous layer. Sometimes it may be they simultaneously options there, or very rarely cutaneous lesions may come first and oral lesions may come later on. Now these bullae of pemphigus vulgaris are very typical. They are thin-walled, flaccid bullae. These are flaccid because they are inside the epidermis. They are very superficial, as compared to when we discuss the pemphigoid, which are subepidermal, which are dense bullae. The fluid is initially clear in these vesicles or bullae, and later on they become turbid, severe, or hemorrhage. Now, bulla easily rupture to form painful raw areas with tendency to spread. Now, that is very important. As compared to the pemphigus foliaceus, the bulla in pemphigus foliaceus, they don't spread. So that is the reason why pemphigus vulgaris is a more dangerous one disease, as mucosa is involved and it has tendency to spread. Okay. Now the sites of lesions are, as I told you, oral cavity, groins, genitalia, axilla, scalp, face, and neck are involved. Now this is one of the photographs of mucosal erosion. You can see stubborn oral erosion. These are oral erosions, and you can see candidiasis, very commonly secondary infected by the candida in the oral cavity. Now these are the blisters, acid bulla, which rupture themselves. There are erosions, and you can see the polycyclic spread. If this was the bulla, it has spread like this. So flaccid bullae and erosions are. These are flaccid bullae. You can see turbid fluid inside. Initially they will be very clear, when they become turbid or Now there are few signs in pemphigus vulgaris. Important are Nikolsky sign. This is basically the lack of cohesion within the epidermis, causes its upper layer to easily move laterally with slight pressure rubbing in active tissue of pemphigus. So what happens is, if there is a bulla, this is the bulla, you can see the blister, you have to give a tangential pressure with the thumb adjacent to the blister, and the skin will peel off. This is known as Nikolsky sign. That means there is lack of cohesion within the epidermis. Now, second sign is called the bulla spread sign or Ashko-Hansen sign. This is very important. You can get a MCQ also on Ashko-Hansen sign. This is basically done in the center of the bulla. You press with the, you just give a press and you mark the bulla before pressing it. So this bulla is marked with the pen. You can see the boundaries, and it spreads beyond the marked lesion. So that means the lesions are active. The pemphigus is active. The gentle pressure on entire bulla forces the fluid to spread under the skin away from the site of pressure due to lack of cohesion of keratinocytes. So that means the antibodies are active. They are acting on the desmosome and causing the lysis of the keratinocyte and separating them. Then there could be secondary infection of the lesions that could lead to sepsis, electrolyte imbalances, etc. Now, another pemphigus vegitans, it is a variant of pemphigus vulgaris. These are flaccid blisters initially formed, they erode, then they form phagoid vegetative lesions or papillomatous proliferation, and commonly they are found on the intertriginous areas. The intertriginous means between the two folds, like groins, behind the ear. You can find it on the scalp, also face, on the tongue also sometimes it has been repeated. There are two types. There are Neumann and Hellepuy types. Neumann is basically a severe variant and Hellepuy is a mild variant. So pemphigus vegitans is basically a vegetative variant of pemphigus vulgaris. Now, how do you diagnose pemphigus vulgaris? I have told you that you can do Nikolsky sign, Ashko-Hansen sign. In the diagnostic part, you have to do a Zank smear. Zank smear is a method to demonstrate the acantholytic cell. What you basically do is, with the blunt end of the blade, you remove the roof of the bulla, and the base which is there, you just scrape with the blunt end. You remove the roof of the bulla with the blade, and with the blunt end of the scalpel blade, you scrape the base, put it on a slide, and do a Giemsa staining, and you will see acantholytic cells in the slide. The acantholytic cells, as I told you, are basically they are the keratinocytes. They are large round cell with hyperchromatic nucleus and perinuclear halo due to peripheral condensation of cytoplasm. These cells are large. The nucleus size is also very large. In the histopathology, you get, once you do a biopsy, what you get? Suprabasal cleft. So level of bulla formation is at the suprabasal, stratum basal. Suprabasal is left with acantholytic cells. Inside that cavity would be acantholytic cells. This is typical known as tombstone appearance. There would be perivascular infiltrator lymphocytes and neutrophils. And if you do a immunofluorescence, direct immunofluorescence, you get deposition of IgG, that is, and C3 deposits. And this typical pattern is known as fishnet or honeycomb pattern. So this is Young smear. You can see the acantholytic cell. This is a acantholytic cell. This yellow marked one. This is a large cell. This big nucleus with perinuclear halo is there. These are acantholytic cells. Then this is histopathology. You can see this is this is the epidermis, and this is a stratum basal. This is the cavity, and these are filled with acantholytic cells. Now this is the photograph showing the direct immunofluorescence, and this is Ig deposition inside this is suprabasal area, Ig deposition in fishnet pattern. So you can get MCQs with the exam that fishnet pattern is found in which the acantholytic cells are found in all intraepidermal blistering diseases, and acantholytic cells will be seen. Now, treatment of pemphigus vulgaris and Risvarian. Now, pemphigus vulgaris is basically, it needs very stringent treatments, as it can spread, and as well as it affects the oral cavity very severely, so patient may not be able to feed himself. That may lead to malnutrition. Chances of getting secondary sepsis or the lesion spread, polycyclic spread is there, are very high. So you need high dose of steroids, and luckily we give steroids around 1.5 to 2 milligrams per kg per day, and long-term steroids are to be needed. As compared to the Western population, their requirement for steroids is much more than the Indian, as their body surface area is more. Another modality of treatment is you take pulse steroids. Daily steroids will lead to a lot of side effects like the suppression of the adrenal pituitary axis, that is very common with systemic steroids. So you give pulse steroids, that means you give suprapharmacological doses of steroids on 2-3 days in a month. So that the anti-inflammatory effects of steroids are there, but the side effects of steroids, the suppression of the HP axis is not there. Hypothalamic pituitary axis is not there. So dexamethasone cyclophosphamide repulse, it was first given by the names by Dr. Shricha, that we gave 100 milligram of dexamethasone in 500 ml of 5% dextrose 3 consecutive days in a month. You give cyclophosphamide 500 milligram IV along with dexapulse on first day, second, third day, preferably second day. FB Institute follows its own protocol, and this pulse is repeated every 4 weeks. And this is given till the new lesions stop coming and old lesions are healed, and it is continued 9 months beyond that also. Then you can give cyclophosphamide 550 milligram OD for another year. Then follow-up period is there. And methylprednisolone pulse can also be given, that is 1 gram for 3 days in a month, consecutively 3 days. Then other treatment modalities are anti-metabolites like immunosuppressants like azathioprine and cyclophosphamide are very commonly used in treatment of pemphigus vulgaris. Generally, the protocol is you start the steroids with the steroid-sparing agents, which are the immunosuppressants like azathioprine or cyclophosphamide. Azathioprine is preferred. And once the control or disease takes place, you continue with the azathioprine and stop the steroids. Then there is another modality of treatment called IVIG, that is intravenous immunoglobulins, can be given 2 grams per kg per cycle divided over 3 to 5 days. Dapsone has been tried. Results are not that great in pemphigus vulgaris group of disorder. And cyclosporin has been tried. And rituximab is coming up as one of the treatment of choices. It is basically a biologic agent. This is targets the CD20 monoclonal antibody. It is anti-CD20 monoclonal antibody, and dose is 375 milligram per meter square, that is the body surface area. Once we follow a protocol of twice a month, every 2 weeks, it is given, and you may get an MCQ. The treatment of choice these days may be rituximab, but otherwise it is high dose steroids.
Thanks for watching. How was the video? Do let me know in comment section. Please do like, share, and subscribe, and don't forget to press the bell icon for more updates. Have a great day.